Schmitt. I'm a professor of law, and I've been involved with the program since its inception more than a decade ago. And originally, the program was in person in Seoul. Once COVID hit, we decided to go online. The DC rules changed, allowing for that. And now the program has evolved into this. It's 100% online, offered in real time primarily on Zoom during the evenings. So when I say primarily, that's our core course time where we're covering all of the material. There are some review or some asynchronous videos that are pre-recorded as well. Those are typically going to be review of what has been done or work that is getting you ready for the class session. So we do ask you to watch a couple videos outside of the scheduled class times, but for the most part, you're showing up to those Zoom sessions, and that's our class time. I'm going to talk in just a moment about the class structure. The way the program's set up, it's a compressed schedule in the summer and the winter, and I think of this like an executive MBA. In an executive MBA, you would go in and finish the courses in a very short period of time in a condensed schedule, sometimes just on the weekends. We do all of ours during the week. We take Wednesday off, but you're in class virtually every other day for a few hours during that class session. So it's an intensive program where we're able to focus on one subject at a time, really try to dig into it and learn it all at once before moving on to the next thing. So instead of the traditional school setup where you're taking 5 classes at once with exams at the end of a term, you're going to take a course for 2 or 3 weeks. You're going to be studying that course and taking the exam before we move on. I think that helps when we're in this intensive program to focus on one thing at a time. There are 26 credits of courses in the program, and that of course is at an ABA law school at the University of Dayton School of Law. And our students typically do 3 things with those credits. So number one is that there's a potential pathway to bar eligibility. That is why many of our students are in the program, is that the District of Columbia allows for people to apply to become a lawyer, to apply for the bar if they meet certain requirements. One of those requirements is if your law school is not an ABA accredited law school, not in the United States, then you can take credits with an ABA law school to potentially qualify for the bar exam. Now, we can't guarantee any particular student admission. We could talk to you, perhaps. I'm sure Mr. Kim could talk to you, but there is a relationship there. That's why a number of the students are taking the program. You can also take the credits and apply them towards an LLM degree. So an LLM degree would be, Dean Ioannidis is going to talk more about this later, but the LLM degree is, of course, the first postgraduate degree in law that you can take after the JD in the US. So, of course, that is a desirable credential. And then number 3, finally, is you get a certificate in US law if you meet a required GPA. And so as long as you're doing well in the program, you could apply those credits towards a certificate that shows that you have a background in US law, or potentially, if your grades are good enough, that LLM degree as well. The curriculum you can see here on the screen, we're covering all of the double bar tested subjects. So in the winter, coming up soon, is criminal law. Then we're going to look at criminal procedure and finally evidence. With the rest of the courses in the summer, as you can see, most of them are 3 credits, but to get us up to where we need to be, constitutional law and property are each 4 credits. They are a little bit more involved. Those are courses that have a fair amount of coverage where it makes sense to divide them up a little bit more. When I'm teaching these courses, and I teach a fair number, my colleagues teach roughly the same way, this is my basic approach. I start by giving a lecture on the context, on the background, where we are in the course. I will then typically lecture on the legal rules you need to know, lecture on the legal background, what are the cases, what are the rules, and then we'll walk through a case in a detailed way. In the US, we have the common law system. Everything is built on cases. In some of the courses, like evidence, like civil procedure, there are rules, there's a framework that we need to work on. But what you're going to find is in a number of courses, like constitutional law, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, or torts, property, contracts, there's not one big document you can look at that has all the rules, right? We have a common law system that we have from England. And so the rules, the law is really based around the cases. And so we're going to be telling you what the law is and then working through cases as detailed examples of what the law means and how it is applied. And then once we go through the cases, I'm going to give you hypotheticals. These could be a totally new factual situation where I'm just asking you, okay, take what you just learned in that case, apply it to this next situation. Or they could be the case with a change in the facts, and we're sort of playing with, if things were a little bit different, how would that affect the outcome? This is really going to help, I think, for you to understand the rule rather than just memorizing it. What you're going to see on our exam, as well as the bar exam, there are memorization questions, but they're not just going to ask you what is the rule in this issue. They're going to present a hypothetical fact pattern to potential clients, perhaps, or a potential client and a defendant, and ask you, what is the result going to be? And so just memorizing the rules isn't really enough. You also need to get practice working through these problems and applying those rules. That's a big part of what we do in class. A big part of what we do in class in terms of hypotheticals that model multiple choice questions. Also, more open-ended questions. Because on the exam, you're going to have an exam that is structured really exactly like or modeled after the structure of the bar exam, meaning that you're going to have shorter essays and multiple choice. And so those essays count for quite a bit of your grade. Roughly about a half of your grade is going to be on the essays, and we're going to grade those in the same way, roughly, as the bar exam, which means you need to be able to write a competent law school essay. And so we're going to be giving you practice essays as you go through each course and some training on essays. We're going to have lectures that teach you how to write a law school essay, and they're going to be pre-recorded for you to look at from no matter which course you're in. But in every course, we're going to be talking about essay writing. We're going to be talking about taking multiple choice questions. I see that as part of the goal of the program because, of course, we want you to learn the law. We want you to know the law, whatever the subject is, constitutional law. But we are aware that a large percentage of people in the program are very interested in taking the bar exam. And so we are structuring it in a way to be as helpful as possible for that goal.